Hello, this is Anthony Petitte, and we're joining FreightWaves today. Accompanied by me is Jake Gustafson. He is the Senior Vice President of Marketplace Solutions at Echo Logistics. Today we're going to be talking about safety in transportation. My name is Anthony Petitte, CEO and founder of TruckPark Inc. Hey Jay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. This is a topic I'm happy to talk about. It's a little bit different of a perspective than I normally get asked to speak about working at a 3PL, but I think it's important for everybody at FreightWaves Live or everyone who's dialing into this conference to realize that our industry is really built on truck drivers, and without them, our lives would be very different. Many of us would have not just different lives, different jobs. So from my standpoint, being in the 3PL industry for about 15, 16 years, it's been really interesting to see the evolution of technology in our industry and how that's helped make the job of a truck driver safer, allow them to run a better business, make safer business decisions, interact with third parties in a more trusted ecosystem. So, just as a kind of an outsider looking in at the tools drivers have had access to, it's been interesting to see how things have evolved over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, I agree. There's just a ton of technology going into the business right now, and it's definitely safe to say that the trucking companies that have used the advanced technologies is actually going to be more sustainable than those that are not. And technology has changed for the better, it's changed for the worse, but there's just so much things right now in transportation that needs to really be looking at that in terms of tech perspective. Our first on the list today is the preventative maintenance, and with preventative maintenance, especially with Echo Logistics and being a massive billion-dollar brokerage, I mean, what do you see right now for trucks right now in terms of that topic?
I think that obviously safety and I would say more maybe from the lens of safe equipment is an important priority for trucking companies. It's not an expense that we deal with firsthand, but maintenance of old equipment, proactive maintenance of newer equipment is certainly a big portion of the cost structure of running a trucking company. So I think that there's clearly best practices that I'm not an expert in telling drivers what to do, but in terms of physical inspections that they can do. One of the things that I think is going to be really interesting in this area, that it's probably something we'll want to keep an eye on for a couple of years from now maybe, is more of how technology allows for fleets to manage this at a global level or a fleet level through technology. And you think about the information trucking companies can now collect through ELD devices, and as engines have become more like computers, all of the data that they're collecting is different than you could collect 15, 20 years ago on an individual truck standpoint. So I really think in the next few years, there's going to be an opportunity for fleets to get their hands on data that allow them to know when they should bring a specific trailer or tractor in for maintenance because of some anomaly the reporting in the computer system is reporting back to home base. So I certainly think as trucking companies invest more and more in equipment, it's going to be important for them to understand and stay in front of costs. And I think the technology can play a big role in this area of preemptive maintenance.
The next part of this we want to talk about is driver fatigue, which has been a huge safety problem for probably 40, 50 years. I mean, it's gotten worse as of what truckers say, at least, the ELD, because they feel like they're a little bit more restricted within hours of service. But drivers are constantly exhausted, constantly falling asleep at the wheel. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is your opinion?
My opinion is, first and foremost, you can't put these drivers in a situation where that's the reality that they're, living with. And I know hours of service is a hotly debated topic because, less hours means less revenue per tractor, and less revenue or less miles per tractor, means less capacity on the roads. You loosen up the hours of service, it puts more capacity back into the road, gives drivers on a daily basis the opportunity to earn more money. So it's a tough topic, and there's lots of different points of view based off of the type of driving you're doing in terms of what's reasonable. But I would just start out with saying, first and foremost, we need to find the right balance, because if there are accidents happening, if there are issues happening related to driver safety that's related to fatigue, I think it's important to not put drivers in that situation. That said, I realize it's easy for me working at a 3PL, not driving a truck, to say that. So it's a tough conversation. Again, going to technology, what I do think is a nice evolution in this space that helps create a safer environment for truck drivers. First and foremost is the ELD mandate. I know that was a topic that got a lot of chatter 3-4 years ago. A lot of companies in the 3PL space thought it was going to be detrimental to capacity. In my mind, it's been, there's certainly been like scenarios where you've noticed changes in behavior, but I think it's been more of a non-event, and I from a capacity standpoint. But what I do think it's done is it started to just bring this conversation of safety much more into the limelight. I think it's something that everyone is a bit more focused on throughout different stakeholder groups in our industry, because they know that ultimately that data is captured. It's not just on a paper log. So I personally have seen a lot of benefits come out of the ELD mandate, and that was all really focused around safety. The other area that I do think hopefully helps protect drivers in this area is dash cams. Again, I know that's a technology that in some ways can be a little bit intrusive, but I have the belief of mine that most truck drivers, 99%, are doing their job well, operate very, very safely, and many times they're the person or the party that ends up getting blamed when there's an accident that occurs, and it's not always their fault. And maybe these dash cams or these accidents that sometimes get blamed on fatigue can get proved differently based off of technology that better captures and modifies or trains driver behavior. So again, it's one of those areas that as a broker, I'm an arm's length, if not further from, because we're not driving the trucks. We're not telling the drivers how many hours a day to operate. We're working within the confines of their hours of service that they've communicated to us.
Those are all really great points. So what I want to do is I want to segue now into, because we've been talking about technology so much, let's segue into driver distraction and how technology, while it's so good for the industry to adapt, how can it actually be bad?
I think the areas that technology can pose a risk, and again, this is just my view more as just like someone who shares the highway with truck drivers, and it's the same sentiment I have, when I've gone on road trips and I've seen people in cars, on their cell phones. Cell phones, any hardware in your hand when you're driving is a distraction. I don't think truck drivers, I don't think, everyday citizens that are coming to and from work should be on a mobile device or any piece of hardware when they're driving. So I do think as social media and as mobile apps have become more commonplace in the lives of drivers throughout our country, it's important that we recognize that for, depending on what type of driving you do, 10 to 14 hours a day, you're actually driving a truck. We need to be thoughtful of that. And we need to be thoughtful of what, if drivers are using this technology when they're driving. So that would be just one obvious example. I think companies that are building products or interacting with truck drivers need to be conscious or thoughtful of is that these tools should be used if there's a user interface when the truck is parked, not when the truck is moving, and if it's being used when the truck is moving, that poses a risk to everybody on the road. So in my mind, that's really the main risk I see in the area of safety. I think most of the other areas that technology has changed has really been about more transparency, access to information, and in my mind, that creates a safer operating environment. Regardless of like what niche or segment you're talking about, better data, easier access to information lets you make better decisions.
Yes, transparency, visibility, accuracy, these are all technology that was going to help these drivers definitely increase or maximize the revenues, really. But, what it goes back down to is the distraction. And, these technologies are great, but I think the fine line needs to be drawn is that the drivers or the carrier, whoever's operating a vehicle at the time, they need to be looking at the technology before they even turn on that engine. And that's what it is at the end of the day.
You could probably debate this for a long time to come, but I'd say simply stated, I think that just the supply and demand characteristics of our industry drive opportunity when the market's tight, and when the market is loose and it's tough to find freight. I think you find some trucking companies may be willing to, I don't know the right word, but roll the dice in some situations to find, to get the right load or work a little bit outside of the boundaries of what they would normally, try to do. So I think there's that free market aspect of our industry, I think inherently just drives different ways of approaching this. And you've got trucking companies that have professional drivers that have, reach 3 million miles, 4 million miles accident free. And then you've got other drivers that are different, so I just think it's tough to create a consistent experience. But I think what you mentioned around, if you're building technology for drivers, it's got to be something they're interacting with when they start, before they start the truck or after they start the truck. And we need to be really thoughtful of not putting them in risky situations.
What is Echo Global Logistics? What are you guys doing for safety for drivers?
I'd say our shipper partners expect a really high quality carrier network, both in the terms of service and communication, but also in the area of safety. So I'd say just safety, carrier compliance, good decision making. It's really ingrained into the culture of the way we work to bring solutions to our shipper partners. Earlier on in the conversation, I mentioned, our industry, really is dependent on truck drivers, and I think, there's 3 million truck drivers in North America, and they service lots of different types of business. They have various levels of different exposure to products, and it's important. It's being that our business is built on those truck drivers, we're constantly trying to bring new services and products to their knowledge that may help them operate, a better business. We've got a program called Echo Drive Rewards. TruckPark is a partner in the Echo Drive Rewards program. It's how we actually met. We thought you guys were bringing a really interesting solution that helped drivers find safe pricing, and we want to offer that capability to our driver network. It's an example of something we're doing in that kind of vein around driver safety.
Well, these are all really great points. I really do appreciate you jumping on the call with me today and really talking about safety and transportation. Everything that you've said is right on the head with, what the current industry is doing and what the industry should be doing. And I really do believe that all the viewers, the listeners, anybody who's been watching this show today is going to learn a lot. And learn a lot from you, learn a lot from myself, and just in the future, as they look at safety and transportation, they can be involved in it as well. And so thank you for being on the show today, Jay.
Of course, thank you for having me. And it's important that we're operating safely no matter what our roles in this industry are.